It followed him into every room, every meeting, every moment of silence. The most powerful man in Europe, commanding armies that stretched from the Atlantic coast to the gates of Moscow, was secretly, quietly, completely terrified. Not of bombs, not of betrayal, not of Stalin, of something far more ordinary. And the people closest to him were forbidden from ever speaking its name. This is the fear that haunted Adolf Hitler every single day of his life. To understand it, you have to go back to the beginning. Not 1933, not the beer hall putsch. You have to go back to a small town in Austria in the 1890s, to a boy who grew up watching his father collapse. Alois Hitler was a heavy drinker. He was unpredictable. He died when Adolf was 13 years old. And according to biographer Ian Kershaw, who spent decades reconstructing Hitler's psychological profile, that childhood left something permanent behind. A wound that never closed. A terror of losing control. But the fear went deeper than that. Much deeper. Hitler had an obsessive relationship with his own body. Not vanity, something darker. He believed his body was failing him. Constantly. Silently. Without warning. According to historian Robert Waite, whose work on Hitler's psychological makeup became a landmark study, Hitler exhibited what psychologists now recognize as severe hypochondria combined with a pathological fear of death by illness. He believed disease was invisible, that it could enter the body and destroy it from the inside before any symptom appeared, that by the time you knew something was wrong, it was already too late. So he built a fortress around himself. Not walls and guards. Rules, rituals, an entire architecture of control designed to keep the fear at bay. He refused to shake hands in public whenever possible. He wore gloves. He was obsessed with the cleanliness of the food he ate and who prepared it. He had tasters, multiple tasters, who ate every meal before him and then waited. He watched them, counting the minutes, waiting to see if they would show signs of poisoning or illness. Think about what that means. Every meal, for years, began with that ritual. Every single day of his life, Hitler sat down to eat and first watched other human beings to make sure the food would not kill him. The man who ordered the deaths of millions was terrified of dying from a piece of bread. But the deepest layer of the fear was something nobody around him was allowed to acknowledge. Not in conversation, not in writing, not in any meeting where he might overhear. The forbidden subject was cancer. Hitler was convinced he had cancer, or was about to develop it, or had already developed it and did not yet know. The historian Theodor Morell, who served as Hitler's personal physician for nearly a decade, kept meticulous records, and those records, later analyzed by scholars including Leonard Heston, reveal a man in the grip of a terror so consuming it shaped his medical care, his schedule, and possibly even his military decisions. Morell prescribed Hitler an almost incomprehensible cocktail of drugs, stimulants, sedatives, hormones, opiates, vitamins, partly to manage Hitler's genuine physical complaints, and partly to manage the anxiety that came from Hitler's certainty that his body was destroying itself. Hitler watched his mother die of cancer. Clara Hitler was diagnosed with breast cancer in 1907. She underwent surgery. She endured a treatment involving chloroform-soaked dressings, and she died in December of that same year. Adolf was 18. He was in the room. He watched her go from a woman to a ghost to nothing over the course of a few months. According to Kershaw, Hitler spoke about his mother's death more than almost any other event in his early life. He carried it forward. He crystallized it. And at some point, the grief curdled into something else, into a conviction that the same fate was coming for him. That cancer was inside his family, inside his blood, waiting. He was so afraid of this that he told multiple people, including Albert Speer, his architect and one of his closest confidants, that he did not expect to live long, that he needed to move fast, that history would not give him time. Historians have debated for decades whether this urgency partly explains why he accelerated toward war in 1939, rather than waiting until Germany was more fully prepared. Whether the fear inside him pushed the entire world. You have to sit with that for a moment. The decision that plunged the planet into the most destructive conflict in human history may have been shaped, in part, by one man's secret, private terror that he was dying. The fear was everywhere. He could not escape it. Every headache was a tumor. Every stomach cramp was the cancer his mother had. Every time his voice went hoarse, and it often did, given how much he spoke, he became convinced his throat was diseased. In 1935, he developed a polyp on his vocal cord. He refused to believe it was benign. He demanded surgeons operate. He demanded second opinions. He refused anesthesia for the procedure because he did not trust what might happen to his mind while he was unconscious. He sat awake through the operation on his own throat. That is what this fear did to him. And his inner circle learned, quickly, that there were words you did not say. You did not say cancer. You did not say tumor. You did not describe your own illnesses in detail in his presence. One aide recalled that even mentioning a relative's health problems in casual conversation could shift Hitler's entire mood for the rest of the day. The fear was that close to the surface, that available, that ready to flood everything. The cruelest irony is this: Hitler, who believed he was dying, who built his entire strategic philosophy around the idea that he had no time, lived to 56. He outlived many of the people he feared he would leave behind. The cancer never came. His body, monitored obsessively, medicated constantly, watched by tasters and physicians, and a man who checked his own pulse in quiet moments in dark rooms, did not betray him the way he always believed it would. The fear that haunted every day of his life, the fear nobody around him was allowed to mention, the fear that may have accelerated a world war, was a lie his mind told him about his own body. And tonight, in some quiet moment, when a thought surfaces that you cannot name, when an anxiety appears and refuses to leave, when your mind builds a wall around something shapeless and says, "This is the danger. This is what will destroy you," you are not so different from the most powerful and the most terrible men who have ever lived. Fear does not check credentials. It does not care what you have built or what armies you command. It finds the room inside you and it moves in. And the only difference between you and the man who refused to let anyone say the word is whether you are willing to say it yourself. He never was. That was perhaps the one battle Adolf Hitler lost entirely to himself.